Hello, everybody, and welcome to Hometown Cable. My name is Bob Venn. Calvin Castine has the camera. And if you don't know where we are this morning with the background, then you have never been to Dannemora, New York. Yes, that's the facility for the, let's say, the Icebox of the North here, the Dannemora State Prison, celebrating its 150th anniversary this year, established up here in 1845. We're going to be looking at some pictures this morning with a man named Peter Light, giving a history in pictures of the prison here, the Correctional Center, for the last 150 years, I guess. And we're right on Cook Street, the main street. It's Cook Street because the first warden at this prison in 1845 was a man by the name of Cook, and they've named Main Street after him. This was the old New York State Prison Hospital for many, many years until I think in the, well, I stand corrected here, but in the 70s or early 80s they stopped being a place for a hospital, and now it's an annex. It's the annex to the Correctional Center. We're in Dannemora, New York, and please stay tuned because we've been wanting to do this for some time, and we're going to see some great old pictures. And thank you for tuning in to Hometown Cable. It's Wednesday. It's the 12th of July. Beautiful day in Dannemora, New York. Tell you how things happen with Hometown Cable. We're parked in the yard at the post office here in Dannemora, New York, and as we're getting back into our car, this young lady comes out and said, "Hi, Bob and Calvin." And this is Audrey Goslow, and now Douglas. She's the postmaster here. If you haven't seen this smiling face in the Champlain post office for how many years there?
I was there 17 years. 17
years in Champlain, New York, and what a familiar face to see here in Dannemora, New York. You're the postmaster here, Audrey.
Yes.
How long?
2.5 years.
Great. And your husband now was a postmaster where?
He was postmaster here.
Here?
He retired.
He got you his job, your job.
Work.
Where are you living now?
Off the Rand Hill.
Off the Rand Hill?
90 Road.
Okay. And she said you should have been here earlier when they had the dedication because it's 150 year of the new stamp.
Mm-hmm. It's 150-year sesquicentennial celebration. We had a special cancellation.
Uh-huh.
The stamp was just it's a regular flag stamp.
When was this?
This was June 3rd.
Okay.
This started off the celebration.
Okay.
And we had Roger Taft do a drawing of the front gate. And then what we did is from that drawing, we made a cachet envelope.
Uh-huh.
And the envelope sold for $1.
Isn't that great? Can we still get one of those?
We might.
I shouldn't ask this on TV.
Maybe off record. Don't put me on the spot.
All right.
It was a great turnout, though. We did something like $800 that day.
You
just
did?
In cachet envelopes and over $400 worth of postage sales.
Isn't that great? Yes. You have a big post office here, too.
Right.
How many rural deliveries do you have?
We have no rural deliveries, just PO deliveries.
None at all?
926 boxes.
So who has the rural delivery here?
Saranac, Katy Bell.
All around you, huh?
Ellenberg Depot.
Okay.
We're all closed in on all ends.
Yep. So you found a home here in Dannemora now, have you?
I guess so.
When did you get your first snow, Audrey?
October.
October.
It lasts till May. It's an interesting office. I'm working in Champlain and in Chazy here. The facility keeps the office very busy.
Okay, you went on from to Chazy, and you worked at you weren't postmaster at Chazy.
Yes, I was.
Yes, you were. How long were you there?
3 years.
Okay, then you came here. All right.
I transferred here.
What's the difference in the size of the post office from
The level is the same. The size of the office is the same. It's the idea is that the prison keeps this office busy.
Oh yes, lots of
We have they house like over 2,800
Right.
inmates at the facility.
Uh-huh.
We deal with all their mail, incoming and outgoing, and they get the biggest volume of our mail here.
So they get it over there, then they resort it. They have their own
They
post
resort
office
it,
within
right.
the.
We just break it down by the main administration, the main inmate mail, and the annex inmate mail.
Okay, how many employees do you have?
We only have 2,
In addition to yourself?
in addition to myself.
So you're a working postmaster?
We are.
You are a
for
working.
sure.
All right, we'll take a short break here. And we got to meet someone at 12:30. Peter Light. Thank you very much, Audrey. An unexpected pleasure.
Yeah. Well, am I off the air?
No, you're on. You want to be off?
How's the light?
What you're seeing on the screen now is the picture of from the air, so to speak, as you see it up high, looking down into Dannemora what do we call it? Clinton Correctional Center, and we're very fortunate to be talking here with P. Light, but we know it's Peter because Calvin told me. Pete, good morning.
Good morning.
And tell us a little bit about Pete Light before we start in with the tour here this morning.
Well, I was originally born in Plattsburgh, and I grew up here in Dannemora, and I always had a hobby of collecting and different things to do with the village and the town. I've done it for years, and the prison was about to get their 150th anniversary underway, and superintendents and council asked if I'd give them a hand and come up with a few things. And as you can see, as we go along, we got quite a few things. We got a lot of history laid out here, a nice pictorial history display, and a few artifacts, 3 nice models of the Clinton Correctional Facility Annex, the main, and we've got a model that depicts 1869 of Clinton, at that time called Clinton Prison.
The pictures, you're telling me a lot of the pictures are your own personal pictures?
95% of them were originally mine. We did copies and stuff, so the facility is going to have them at this point. They depict different things with the prison or within the village. Most of it is the prison.
Okay, so you are a correctional officer?
Yes.
How long have you been here?
I've been a correctional officer for 27 years. Right now I'm at Altona.
All right.
I'm working over there. I still live here within the village.
Well, now that's different, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're one of the biggest ones in the North Country, and we're living here but working in Altona.
Yeah. Well, when you say biggest, too, this is the biggest in the state when it comes to state facilities.
All right. Is it one? It's the maximum. Is as maximum as it can be?
The main is Max B, and the annex is what they call the annex, which was originally the old Dannemora State Hospital. In 1972, it was switched over to ACTEC and Camp Adirondack. The Camp Adirondack, which is in Gabriel's, originally started right here. And now this is Max B at the annex, and it houses a couple different programs within the facility.
Okay. At one time when you had the hospital here, and they came from other prisons to be what do we call it? Incarcerated here? What do you call it? What would you call it when they were sent here?
Well, it was Dannemora State Hospital. What it was they shipped inmates from other facilities that were insane convicts.
Okay, and became insane once they got in prison. They weren't like that when they came in.
That's correct.
All right. Now, anything else you wanted to add to that?
No, that's okay.
Now, this picture, now tell us a little bit about this beautiful painting here.
Well, this painting was done by an inmate here in the facility, and it depicts what the facility looks like today. It's kind of a bird's eye view, an aerial view of what it looks like. It's quite a nice painting. The fellow that did it did a real good job. He's quite talented.
All right, let me ask you a couple of questions. What is this unit right here?
That's the powerhouse.
For the complex?
The complete complex. That supplies the power and the heat and the hot water, etc.
You generate your own electricity?
Some of it is and some of it isn't.
Now the actual main is within this wall here, correct?
That's correct.
And you call that what?
That's what they call Clinton Main.
Clinton Main, okay. And this unit over this side is
the old Dannemora State Hospital, which is referred to as the annex.
Okay. Now you'll notice this doesn't have the cement wall. It's got the wire and what do you call the
common wire and just the regular fences, and it's double fenced. It's all set up with monitoring systems, and it's a Max B. It's classified Max B.
Is that farms way in the back there, and is that anything to do with the prison way back?
That's some of the old Dannemora State Hospital farms. They're just used for storage today.
Do you still operate a farm over to the west here?
Yes, there is.
Okay, that's operated. You have cows and you raise some of your own meat and so forth?
Well, basically it's a dairy farm.
Okay. Now, tell us a little bit about what we're looking at, just in general, because we'll be seeing so much more. You have the wall that goes all around. How high are the walls?
The front wall is about 35 feet. They're not as high on the other sides, but it encompasses a large area. Some of the front wall was some of the original stone wall, and it's just decorated over and raised, which was done in the 30s.
Okay. The residence for the ward now, is it still inside or is it outside?
It's outside.
It's outside. And these are the cell blocks. They call cell blocks.
Correct.
Way in the back is probably, I think I read somewhere, the only church that's by itself in the whole prison system in the United States?
Yeah, it's the only Catholic church that was built.
Back in here.
And it was built by inmates.
Okay.
We have a section on this and on the other displays.
Okay.
So when we go around,
all right, we'll
see a
look
little
at that.
bit better.
All right. And we'll particularly want to hear about this play yard or yard here. This is very unique in itself.
That's the north yard. It's a recreation area for the inmates. It's all divided up into courts. And when I say courts, it's different areas where different groups of inmates get and they meet and just socialize and enjoy the recreation there.
Okay. This is Main Street right here,
That's
right
Cook
in front
Street.
of the wall.
Cook Street, yeah.
And we're in a building just to the east of this unit right here. We're right about where this frame is in a warehouse. What is this warehouse generally used for?
It's used by industries, which is they call Crowcraft in New York State, and it's used to store different supplies that they manufacture in industry. Industry in the prison at this time is along the lines of textile, and it's been textile in Clinton Prison since about 1877, I believe, in that neighborhood, 1878.
Okay.
And it's been around for quite a long time.
I was just going to ask you what D.C. is, but I think I understand. It's New York Department of Corrections.
That's right.
Figured it out as I was talking. Pete Light will be right back. Except for interrupting, which I do quite often, Pete will more or less be taking us through these pictures and these displays, which are on a wall. And how did these come about? Who made these up?
Well, the cases themselves I designed, and in the vocational building maintenance shop over in Altona, the instructor, Jim Gagno, took his class and they put them together as far as the woodwork and putting them together. And then from there I took it over and put the pictorial part into it. After that, the history and what you see is displays.
What I know, and I want to make sure you understand, this is hinged. These two will fold together, and they make like a suitcase. See, they close up, and they'll put them away, and can be used over and over and over.
Folds up just like a book, so it's mobile,
Yeah.
so it can be used. Because we're going to use it this summer. We're using it here this Sunday, and on the 18th of July, which is next Tuesday, it'll be at the Clinton County Fair. And in August, there is a final anniversary dinner for the 150th celebration at Angel Hall in Plattsburgh, and the display will be there again. So it's made to be mobile, picked up, and be able to move it and set it up again. So it won't take a lot of time and a lot of work.
All right. You people who are watching, let's hear that one more time. In August, it will be at the Angel Building in Plattsburgh.
Angel Hall, yep. And there's a dinner there.
And what day is that again? It's in August. Watch for the paper, and you'll be able to see it firsthand because you're going to be watching this video, but later you can see it firsthand. And you'll be there?
I'll be there.
Huh? Yeah. It'll be at the fair if we show up before the fair. All right.
Yeah.
Very good. Start right in and tell us about.
Well, this first section right here kind of depicts all the different wardens or superintendents. So originally they were called agents and wardens. Today they're called superintendents. And this depicts, it tells all of them. The guy in the center was Ransom Cook. He was the first one. It was in 1845 when he started the prison in January 1st. But the first inmates never got here until June 3rd of the same year. There were the first 50 inmates came, and then 44 more inmates came in the 24th of June, and they came from Auburn, and the first bunch came from Mount Pleasant.
These two means that you've changed the emblem over the years?
Well, there's actually three of them. There's one down below here. This depicts probably the original emblem. There wasn't, I really don't know what it was, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
But this one started just shortly after 1930, and it went right straight through until about 1973, 72, and then they picked up this emblem right here. And as you can see, that one says New York State Correctional Services. The first one said New York State Department of Correction. And the one that's used today is the New York State Correctional Services again, which is quite similar to the other one, but they got rid of the Department of Correction and went to Correctional Services.
Okay.
This setup right here shows a little bit of the original appointments that Ransom Cook made. Originally, the prison in about 1941, people of Keysville, New York, got after the governor of the state, who was Governor William Seward at the time, and they wanted a prison for Essex County. They wanted it for employment and other reasons. And so Governor Seward appointed Ransom Cook to do a survey and a study of the feasibility of putting a prison in Essex County. Well, when it was all done, it ended up in Clinton County in Dannemora, New York. And again, he turned around, the governor, and he appointed Ransom Cook, the first agent and warden. And when we look down in this area over here, these are his first appointments in May of officers, doctors, assistant wardens, and mainly just guards. Mm-hmm. And it's a very short thing. It was something we picked up in the last year, and it was quite interesting. One guy went from 1 week from being a guard to the next week he was the sergeant of the guards. So yeah. Things were moving fast. They had to get it set up.
They moved fast, but I read somewhere back in 1850s to get to Dannemora from Plattsburgh was 17 miles. In the worst roads in the state, took 6 hours to get here from Plattsburgh.
Well, in Ransom Cook's original report, he kind of wrote a little bit about that, and he told how rugged the land was coming up, and that the prison site was on the side of a mountain, and the gullies and the water runoffs and etc. all the way up in the woods, and some of the corduroy roads that were there to get here. It was quite a job, and like you said, it took them 5 or 6 hours. And at that time, Katyville was in the area, and Saranac was south of Dannemora. They were already existing communities, so it was quite interesting the way it came about. As far as photos from 1845 to presently 1872. There's a big gap there. We have no photos. Nobody has ever come up with any. But the main photos that start around in 1872 that start showing up. Over here again, on the sesquicentennial for the anniversary, we came up with this logo right here, and it depicts the old warden's house. The old warden's house was built about 1880. And was torn down in 1869. Today, I don't think it'd ever come down because it'd be a historical monument. I mean, it was Victorian in architecture, and it was quite beautiful.
Now, did I hear you say 1869 it was torn down? Or
no,
1969. Okay, yeah. Not too long ago.
Here's another when you come across right here. Look. This is actually what it looked like with the porches on it. It changed throughout the years. Originally, it didn't have the porches on it. There was no porches. There is some photos of that. And one of them, what they called the South Hall, hooked right onto the back of it. That was a cell block. Mm-hmm. And then the original warden's house was off to the side. As we go on later, I'll show you what the original warden's house looked like. The greenhouse probably today outside the facility is the only existing old building that's still here today. And that's probably the only piece of structure that actually is. The prison's been rebuilt many, many times over the years, mainly because of fires. There was a lot of fires from the 60s to the turn of the century, and then there was a large riot in 1929, and there was quite a lot of destruction then, and it was rebuilt. But as we get on, we'll get into a section on that, and we'll be able to show you how the construction went and what it looked like and what they built. Mm-hmm. These right here are cell blocks. This is the East Hall. This was the main cell hall. This housed about 550 inmates. This was the main cell hall. Over here is the South Hall. This is a picture of inside the South Hall, and remember I told you a few minutes ago it was attached to the back of the warden's house. The warden could actually go from his residence, go right into the cell block and go right around. He'd go into another cell block called the West Hall, and he could go right into the administration building. He could walk from his home and go throughout every cell block in the prison without ever going outdoors.
You'll notice there, it looks like there's 3 levels here and 4 here.
No.
Is that only 3 also?
No, there's only 3 here too.
Okay.
And it's just the shadows of the
oh,
light.
That's the shadow, all right.
Of the
light that's the shadow coming through.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. No, they were all the same size. They weren't over 3 tiers high.
Okay.
We go down here. Here's a picture of 1920. Well, this was the 75th anniversary of the institution. So today is 50. We've doubled it. They did a little bit back then too. How extensive they got into it, we really don't know. These pictures right here are quite interesting. This was a fellow by the name of Moses Goodrich. He sold water in the town. Not everybody had a well and everything, so he sold water. He had an oxen and a couple old wooden stave barrels, and he'd go around and he'd sell water. But in the background, you see like this stockade fence. This was actually what the wall of the prison looked like back then. And later years and completed, it was started in about 1880. They changed it from the stockade fence to stone. And as it went to stone, it was completed finally in 1887. It was a 7-year project. They originally started, I think, they only appropriated $20,000 to do the whole wall. But that more or less depicts where the stone was that they put is where the main prison is today. And it was quite a job. If you look here, you can see the wall going up. They're working here. This is the same fellow, Moses Goodrich again. He's selling water still, a few years later. And you can see the stockade wooden fence in the back. Right. And you can see the stonework with a few kids around here and there.
You'll notice that the crossbars are on the outside, not the inside. No place to climb up.
That's correct. That's correct.
Right. There's the wall down there.
This is a nice picture we came across a few years ago from a fella in the area, Mr. Donald Jackson. He lent it to us. It was one, he had the original. And it depicts what the prison looked, kind of, well, it says right on there, bird's eye view, 1892. And when we look at it, we see the administration building, the corner of the wall, some of the old industry, and over here on this side, part of the Old West Hall, and some of the main cell blocks that we spoke about. But everything you see there is gone today. It's been completely redone. Yep. The only thing that's there, and it's underneath the old wall, is the stone. Part of the stone on the main wall, on the main street.
1912 picture.
Yeah, this is a picture of the officers in 1912. They were posed there. This was taken in front of the administration building. At different times, they back then, of course, they didn't have the workforce that they got today. Today they employ 1,300 people. Back then they probably employed 200 people. And they couldn't get the groups together to take pictures. I mean, they could, but today they can't. It's just so massive. It's so big.
We're going to take a short break here because whether you know it or not, there's a third person or item around here. It's that fly that's flying around and landing on our heads and so forth. But before, cases built by the Altona Correctional Facility Vocational Shop, layout and photos by W.P. Light. That's this man right here. We'll be right back. Thanks for tuning in to Hometown Cable. We're back, and Calvin is plugged into the electricity, so there's no limit now, Peter, what we can do about your pictures and this great story of Dannemora Correctional Center.
Yeah. What we got here, Bob, is a picture. It was copied from an old lithograph. It's kind of on the dark side. It depicts what the prison looked like in 1869. We have a model that can be looked at later. I don't know if you fellas want to take some photo shots of that, but the model is the exact same thing that's here. So we can take a look at that later and get a little bit more of a layout what it actually looked like.
Okay. One question about this period. Was Dannemora village or spot here, or did it grow around the prison later, the hamlet?
Well, the village was here. It was the town of Dannemora, but the village was never set up until later, almost the turn of the century.
So it came up after the prison?
But the village was here.
Okay. We took an unexpected break here, and we were talking as to whether there was a hamlet and houses here before this was built, or did these come after that? And I think you say the houses were here first, at least a few of them.
Yeah, there was a few here.
All right.
And these people, from February of 1845 to June, they constructed part of the stockade fence and one large building which would house 126 inmates, and would also house officers and their keepers. There was people that lived in the hamlet before, and it was a mining town, very small mining town. In 1854, it originally became the town, part of the town of Dannemora. It was part of the town of Beatmantown. It was a break off of it. So There was people here actually when the prison was actually being built. There was a hamlet here.
Right. Now, you also mentioned before we get on that prisons were supposed to be self-sustaining. Tell us about that.
Well, the original idea back then with prisons was to make them self-supporting, so that financially they'd be solvent. It was a tough thing to do. They had a lot of problems because just one thing after another. They'd run a good year and then they might run 4 years as a deficit. Politics came into play on it. The area where it was located being out of the way, they claimed to say played against it. But it was one thing after another. But the main thing with prisons back then is they were self-supporting. Now this was the third prison to be built in New York State. The first one was Auburn Correctional Facility, and then Sing Sing, and then this one. And this one, again, and the others, they were all trying to be self-supporting by having some type of industry. And industry played a part right then until today. But in 1897, of course, industry did a lot of changing. It changed a lot over the years for different reasons, but it changed then because inmate labor couldn't compete with private industry. And that was the end of that. It just couldn't go any longer. So at that time, they were into textiles and stuff like that, and they were making clothing for the inmates, clothing for hospitals in different places. And they were also making other things. They were making some tinware, woodenware. At one time in the 1870s, they made fur hats here. But 400 inmates were employed making fur hats. And they were done by contract labor, where they would have contractors come in from the outside, and the contractors would pay the state so much a day for each inmate to make hats for them. And this is where the state got their money. But they were employing inmate labor, which is against the law today. And that's all changed. But what's gone on now is that industry has stayed, and it still tries to be supporting, but they have to sell within their own faction within the states. They can sell, like with their textiles and stuff like this, they can sell to the state hospitals. They can sell pajamas, clothing to other facilities. Some of the facilities within the state make furniture. They sell it to schools, colleges, state colleges, and other facilities, or anything to do with state, village, town, any municipalities like that, anything to do with the government.
All right, now, the prisoners get paid, or the inmates get paid to work in these facilities, too,
yes,
a little bit.
They get paid so much a day, yes.
And that money is put into a reserve for them so when they get out?
They have their own accounts.
They have their own account, or they can spend some of it in your while they're here at the correctional.
That's correct. They can purchase different things through them for themselves with it.
All right. Now, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you remember this is not a prepared we're doing here. When we're interrupting, and we're getting along now to these, and they wore uniforms then too. They had distinctive clothing.
Well, back then, there's the old striped uniforms for inmates. It started way back in the beginning with Clinton Prison. I mean, it was always striped uniforms, and it went to 1903. It stopped in 1903. And you can see from some of these photos, you can see some of the old uniforms. In some of these photos, you see bands. Bands were a big thing. Inmate bands were a big thing back then. They were quite common within the facility. They played a lot, and you always heard them. They even played in the mess halls when the inmates went to mess. It was a real big thing back then. This was at the railroad station here, where they're greeting somebody. I can't really tell you who it is.
They probably aren't greeting new inmates.
I can't really tell you, but they're greeting somebody there.
All right.
As we go down through
the
here,
residence again, a good shot of the residence.
Yeah, this is another picture of the warden's house. It's a winter scene. As you can see in the background, you can see the old firehouse.
Yep.
And this is, it was built in 1880.
Really too bad to have torn that down, isn't it?
Yeah. Today, historians would scream today if they tried to tear something like that down today. And we go over here a little bit more, and you see some of the old officers, the old type uniforms. This is in 1915, and Governor Whitman of New York State was touring the prison. He was here and touring Dannemora State Hospital, because Dannemora State Hospital started in 1900 as far as opening, and he was up here to tour it and see how things were going. Again, we get down into this section here, and we see some of the striped uniforms. This picture here is inmates lined up going into a bathhouse along the old main cell hall. Here's a group again. Here's a picture. Now, actually, this is the warden's house with all the porches on it. So you can see how different it changed throughout the years. They kept adding to it.
Yep. That's 1885, all right?
Yeah. And then we go a little bit different, down here a little bit different. And this is a copy of a photo was made by Seneca Ray Stoddard. Our next section of pictures, in a few moments, we're going to get into him, so I won't say too much about it now.
Okay.
But this is looking west, and it looks across the back of the institution, and if you notice, you see a lot of piles of wood. Wood was their main source of heat. Wood was used in the kilns. Wood was used in the blast furnaces to make iron, etc. at that time. And at one time, they stripped everything around here for 6 miles in every direction. There was no wood left at one time. And this kind of hindered the making of nails and the mining of ore with the mining industry that originally started here. That was number one.
They made nails for years.
Yes, for several years.
The cut nails, the kind that you would, the square or rectangular nails.
That's correct, the old type.
Yep.
Yeah. And we go.
Well, this is probably one of the most important built rooms in the whole facility, right there. Don't forget that one.
This photo right here is the mess hall, and it shows what it looked like at that period of time. This is about 1885. This was in a building called the main building. The main building on the bottom was a mess hall, and the next story was a 3-story building, was the guard room and some offices. And then the 3rd story was the hospital. And it was all one big stone building. It was quite a beautiful building. As we get going down here just a little bit further, we've got a photo of that building, and I'll go over it.
Okay. Remember, 1885, 110 years ago, folks, in that picture, 110 years ago. Another picture, I guess, up here of the mess hall.
Yeah, this is another one of the mess halls. This is around turn of the century. And again, the inmates are kind of posed there, and it depicts all the food laid out on the tables and etc.
It was already laid out ahead of time for them, so they came in and sat down to it? Is that just a...
No, I think it's posed here.
Okay.
It's posed here for the photo.
Okay.
And we go a little bit further. Here's a 4th of July parade, again in front of the warden's house. The warden's house was kind of a symbol or a monument, and that's why we picked it for our logo for the sesquicentennial, because everybody we either refer to the prison with the wall or the big huge warden's house. And at that time it was quite a beautiful structure, and everybody, you know, kind of looked forward to it, looked at it as a monument. But it's a shame that it had to get torn down, but it did. We go a little bit further and we see that these pictures are kind of mixed. This section, this is kind of a generalization of everything. This is a picture around 1925. It depicts part of the old main cell hall, part of the old bathhouse, and part of the old powerhouse. It was this section of the area right here in 1929 there was a bad riot. But as we get going further on down, we've got a section on that. We'll show you. We've got some photos on it.
Okay. The powerhouse, I know. Remember when the other picture showed it was outside, a couple of streets down. So originally it was inside the walls.
Yeah, originally they were, but not any longer.
All right.
So we go a little bit further. We see a picture here in 1848. There was an act passed to appropriate $75,000 to get the prison going more. And at that time, it was funny, in that act, they also appropriated a cannon. The cannon was used to signal and for an escape or an emergency or anything like that. But that's what it was used for. It was more or less a signaling device.
All right.
Here we've got in North Yard in 1941. This is shortly after the construction era, and it depicts what some of the old blocks used to look like, the old hospital, the old mess hall. The new mess hall has already been built. You can see it in the background over here. But this was the main yard up on the hill, the North Yard, recreation yard. Again, like I said, these are a generalization, a mixture of prison pictures, these sections. This one right here depicts the hospital. And it was completed in 1941. This picture is about 1943. And it showed what the hospital looked like in the prison at that time. This photo right here in 1956, December, The Saturday Evening Post did an article on the prison. They did about a 4 or 5 page article with photos. This is one of the photos here, and it's a picture. It shows a lineup. Some of these guys are still around today, so it shows what the officers looked like at lineup and their uniforms at that time.
Want to remind you that one more picture here before we take a break. North Yard, 1930.
Yeah. This shows in 1930 how there was very little, as far as courtyards, they weren't there at that time. This is before that.
Looks like they're playing ball or something here. That looks like home plate or something here?
Yeah, they're playing
and
baseball.
You can see the wall here and the barn in behind. That's the dairy barns up.
Well, that dairy barn is where the church is today. Actually, it was outside the prison at that time.
And then they put the wall back further.
That's correct.
All right.
And where that farm is today is where the church is. And it was a big thing, ball games back then. A lot of outside teams came in and played. It was very common to have baseball games within the facility with outside teams.
It goes to say there were no away games.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We're talking with Peter Light, and we're showing you a display that he's prepared for the Dannemora Correctional Center. Take a short break. Please stay with us. We're coming right back, and there's a lot more about the important industry here in a home for how many people? 2,600. Home for.
It's up in the neighborhood of 2,700, 2,800
here in Dannemora, New York.
Okay.
Back to the pictures. Convicts lined up there in the left corner.
Okay, a few moments ago we talked about the main building, and in this section we'll see about 3 or 4 different shots of that main building that housed the hospital, it housed the guard room and offices, and it housed the mess hall. Back in 1872, there was a fellow by the name of Seneca Ray Stoddard. He was a photographer, and he actually was a map maker. His home base or town was Glens Falls, New York, and he used to go around the countryside during the time of the Civil War and etc. And he'd take a lot of photos and he'd sell them within the community, and he'd turn them into either regular photos or he'd turn them into stereos. Stereos were the old type Viewmasters, the double pictures. And he sold a lot of those. People would buy those. And he had his own system of developing and stuff like that, and he was quite a photographer. His stuff, any of his stuff today is collector's items because of his the way he processed and printed pictures.
You know, I think that the maps that we have of 1869 are his. I think his name is in the front of that book, Calvin, that we have with the town of Champlain, the village of Champlain. I'm going to check it, but I think those are his.
Yeah, he was quite popular back then.
Mm-hmm.
But as we go through, he took a group of pictures of Clinton Prison, and he wrote a little article on it. He kind of described what the prison was like, and he tried to do it in his own words, and he did a nice job of it. Some of the way he described it, how the sounds were, and then the lights, and what it looked like to him from across the street. And he was quite interesting the way he described it. But as we go through some of the pictures here, we'll see. This again is the main building. These are inmates lined up, if you look, and they're in lockstep there, and they're going to the mess hall. Again, they'd rerun in different companies. That was one company and then the other. If you look very carefully, you notice with the old pictures, they're hard to see some of them, but the officers' caps back then and uniforms were basically like a suit, and their caps were nothing but a derby, and that's what they wore.
So that must be him right in the end back there.
That's correct.
Okay, yeah.
That's correct.
And there's one there, I guess.
Yeah, there's one fellow standing in here.
Okay.
Okay, this is the original front gate, what it looked like in the prison. You can see part of the stockade fence around to the right of it, and a bell device.
The bell, yes.
Right over the top. And again, with an inmate working out front, opening and closing the gate with them. As we go down, this is a photo of what they call the office. The office was a building exactly as it depicts. It was an office where records were kept, and they just ran the prison from there.
Within the wall?
The office was within the wall, yes.
Okay.
Well, again, with our model that we've got coming up, that I think you'll be taking a picture of, it'll show where all these different buildings were actually arranged within the facility. Again, this is that main building again, and here's inmates lined up with lockstep.
What's a lockstep?
A lockstep.
Stopped?
A lockstep was where the inmate in a straight line would line up behind the others, and he'd put his hands, the inmate behind would put his hands on the shoulder of the inmate in front of him. The very first inmate in the row would cross his arms, and this is the way they would march. And it was because of being so tight and everything, you didn't move too fast, but it was kind of a discipline thing, and also was a setup where the inmates, the officers at that time, the guards, knew where the inmate's hands. So if there was a problem, they could tell because the inmate hand would be dropped.
Imagine trying to do that today, Peter.
Oh, you can't do that. It's outlawed.
It's outlawed. You can't do that today.
It's against,
Yep.
And again, here's that main building. You can see the picture of it overall. It was quite an interesting building with a big watch over the top of it. And
so this was the watch for guards up there, yes?
I don't really know if they were up there or not, but there was. That's basically what it is a watch. So, and these pictures down here. Now you got to remember that the industry back then, the main industry was iron ore. So you had blast furnaces and stuff like this, and the mining. The mining was actually right inside the wall, going on. The mine was inside the wall. It was way on the west end of it. And as we get going,
at least the entrance was.
The entrance of the mine. That's
then
correct.
It went underneath and went out.
It was actually inside the prison. And so we go over here, and this is looking south right here, this picture. Again, the main building that we were just describing in the background, these buildings right here are part of the nail factory. They made nails. Off to the right is a laundry. And let's see, we'll get up here. This is another posed picture. And this was on the east side of the prison. And again, the inmates are all lined up in lockstep there, and they're just basically they're out there to be posed for cameras for Seneca Ray Stoddard. Again, we go down a little further. It's one of the old mess halls, what it looked like in 1872. And this was the next one over. We show a picture here of inside a cell block with inmates working. And as you can see in the background, it looked like a building, but actually it was the officer's stand, or where his desk was and where he ran that block from. We go over here, a little up here, and this is a picture of a hospital. And you see these bars here, these are radiators, and these are inmates sitting along their beds. And again, you see the striped uniforms, and this is a guard or a keeper at that time. And we go over here. This is kind of an interesting picture because a lot of people didn't realize it. Back then, your assistant deputy superintendent, today, back then called a principal keeper. They were second in charge of the institution. Well, the principal keeper lived within the facility. He had his own house right inside the facility. On the other side of that house, from what I understand, was another home attached to it. It was like a duplex. And the chaplain, the head chaplain, lived in there too. This is the main cell hall again, held 550 inmates, the main block. In the foreground right here was part of the old nail factory. Again, the mining industry, where they made the nails. The raw metal would come over after from the blast furnaces and the rolling mills, and they bring it over here and they put it into nails. We go down a little bit further, and this is just a picture that the Clinton County Historical Society had their set up back a few years ago, and it was a copy of a picture that they showed. It was Seneca Ray Stoddard again, and it depicts a guy, an old fella there with a little shack out in the yard along the wall.
And that's the privileged treatment, like your north wall is today. I mean, your north yard, more or less, the same type of thing.
Well, really, that's the way it looked at the time.
And it's 1870. It's over 100 years ago.
We go down here a little bit further, and this is when you'll see what your officers look like. They basically look like they were in their uniforms were nothing but a black type suit with a tie and derbies.
I think you needed a mustache to work here too.
Yeah, that was quite common all over.
It sure was. Yeah, long ones.
This picture down here depicts the original warden's house. This is what the original warden's house looked like before the big one that was built in 1880, and it was only right next to where the huge warden's house that was the 5-story house that was built. They sat right next to it, right over in the same area where the greenhouse is. We come to the right here a little bit further, And we're looking west, where what they call High Post Tower. In the center of the prison, they had a tower, and it was right in, and there would be an officer up there, and it was a lookout. It was a guard post. And this is the photo was taken. This photo here was taken from here, looking west. And actually, you're looking at these right here are some of the old state shops and stuff like that. The state shop and the shoe shops and stuff like that, where they made their own clothing, their shoes, and where it was stored for supplies. As you can see back then, the grounds weren't the neatest thing in the world either.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look this way, the mines were actually over there, but you don't see them in this picture. The depth of field is a little bit off on that. And here's your High Post Tower we just spoke of.
Uh-huh.
And in the background there's a sawmill. And this is where, these are taken from old stereos of Seneca Ray Stoddard again that we spoke about.
You're watching Hometown Cable program. What's going on here on every Sunday? Bob Venn, Calvin Castine bringing it to you. And we're talking today with Peter Light, and he's talking with us, giving us a history of the Dannemora Correctional System. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Next series of pictures are industries, present and past.
Yeah, industry, like we were saying a short while ago, industry played a big part in the institutions and still do today.
Mm-hmm.
They provide a lot of labor for the inmates, and also it's a pay for the inmates, and it's an incentive the way it's set up.
Peter, who wrote the text here?
I did.
You did that too, okay.
Yeah,
Give you credit for it.
All the text that's written in all these I kind of got together, or they're quotes from other text, and I tried to quote them if they were quotes.
Okay. Just two pictures very quickly at the top. They don't have any dates on them. Okay, tailor shop.
Okay, this again is a Stoddard picture, so we know this depicts back 1872. That's when he took his pictures. This shows some of the old tailor shops within the industry part of the prison. Industry throughout the years with the textile was really big. I mean, it started back in the early 1894 and in there, and it came up through, and even during World War II, they made Osgood cloth that was used for the Army within the United States, and they sold material to the Department of the Navy. So the prison actually supplied a little bit of material as far as textiles and cottons and stuff like that for the military during World War II, which is, a lot of people don't realize it, but they did. Everything, they would take the raw cotton right from the bundles. As you can see, if you look at this picture right here, it's being trucked into industry. Industry is the buildings behind us. Mm-hmm. This depicts about 1942. And you can see the bundles of raw cotton. The cotton was actually taken right from the raw cotton and turned into fabric. It was spun and woven and put together. As you see from this picture down below, this is a bundle here, and this is where they're breaking the bundles and putting it into the machines to start working with it. Dye tanks, they went straight through. They did all their coloring and everything. It was basically a textile mill right from the beginning right to the end, right to putting the fabric together.
Now, Peter, a sidelight here, but did the inmates have to work if they didn't want to?
The inmates are always encouraged to work.
Encouraged to work, but so that most of them are working at one thing or another.
Yes, and most of them like to, because for the simple reason it passes time. They earn a little bit of money from it,
right?
And you know, idle time is no good for them.
What can they buy today as an inmate? Can they buy magazines in there? Can they buy candy, soft drinks, things like that?
Within the commissary, they can purchase different hygienes. They can buy soaps. They can buy foods. They can buy magazines. Just odds and ends, stuff like the same stuff that you and I would buy at the grocery store for ourselves. They can buy it. They buy it at a little bit cheaper cost.
Okay. Now, if they didn't have the money to buy, can their relatives give them money to buy stuff? Are they allowed to get money?
They can have money sent into their account, and they can buy.
So they don't really handle the money. It's a charge against the account.
That's right. It's all accounts. They don't handle it.
Okay, so they don't play cards for it. They don't have it.
No.
Okay, gotcha, gotcha. And some of the pictures that Calvin is looking at here, and some of the these are old industries.
Yeah, some of the old industries, they had tin shops, and They made different types of containers within the tin shops, different things like that. And then here's some of the old cotton mill shops where they were actually spinning the thread with the cotton mill. You can see it in the background, all the machinery. Down here is another, this was a basket shop. They had woodenware, they made wooden scoops and stuff like that. This one actually here is depicts a basket shop.
Let me take a break right here just for this way. If you remember, we talked to Jim Misek up in Moore's Forks. We talked about the belt. See, here's the main shaft like he had, and all these belts are running off from that main source of power. See, they got it all over here. That's the kind of operation he had. Here's another one here. All ran off these main shafts. Go ahead, Peter. Excuse me.
Okay. As we go on, all the rest of these pictures actually depict different tailor shops, weave shops, and what they look like. The dates are on them.
1909, another picture of the weave shop.
1890.
1890, really back. A sewing shop in the early 1900s.
Yep. And this picture right here is probably back about 1890, and it depicts some of the old spinning shops. And then again, you see your striped uniform.
Now you got to remember when you're looking at these that these people didn't come here trained to run these machines. Who did the training at that time?
Well, they had supervisors within the facility. Either the officers were trained in it and did it, or they actually had people within the industry that were trained with working with textile and stuff like that, and they would oversee it. And that's the way it is today. It's seen by civilian people.
Yeah, today there, other than your Department of Correction guards, or what do you call yourselves today? It's not guards.
Correction officers.
Correction officers. They have people who are teachers who teach these things.
That's correct.
And also teach them for jobs when they get out.
That's
right?
correct.
This also helps them in there.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move right along now before we take another break. We're looking at Old Ward 5, the old TB hospital.
Well, TB was a big thing back, and still is today, within the prisons. It's a dominant disease that around that time, and they had a lot of trouble within this time in 1900s and 1910, 1915, 20, in that time, because they hadn't yet found a cure for TB, and it was being played as a big problem. One of the big things that they found out about TB was that if you lived in the North Country, as you remember Saranac Lake and Lake Placid, some of these people came from all over the country to live there because of the type of air for the lungs, and it was just a better environment for them, and they seemed to come around and adapt to it better. And again, being where Clinton Prison was, it was on the side of a mountain, and it was the elevation's high again, and it's just similar to that. So they found out they had quite a success rate with it. And at one time, in 1918, when they completely finished the TB hospital was up and back of where the prison is today, and it was separate from the facility, but it was all run by doctors from there. There was a doctor by the name of Thayer, and there was a doctor by the name of J.B. Ransom. And J.B. Ransom was quite an authoritarian on TB back then, and TB within the prison systems within the country. He wrote a lot of novels on it, books, and he was quite an expert on it. And this is a picture of him today. This was J.B. Ransom. This was Dr. Thayer, and there was a pharmacist here and the steward of the hospital. As we go down further, the old hospital that was up to behind the facility had a large porch on it. Again, because of the air and the sunshine, it was a good thing for it. And the inmates actually sat right out. Yep. And there was a sun porch, and again, right up above it, for the fresh air. It was a big thing.
Yeah. I wish I could remember her name, but the comedian who was on the shows that sat in the big rocking chair. Well, this tuberculosis ward 6 had big chairs too, you'll notice, but that's not for her. That's for, I guess, the correction officers.
No, these were patients' chairs.
Why would they sit so high?
It was just the way they're made. They're made quite big. They were probably made within the facility.
Yeah, they're probably close to 3 feet. You had to step up to get on that chair.
Well, not really.
No?
The bed was next to it. It was just a little bit lower in the bed.
But they look high. They sure are large chairs.
They were all wooden chairs. They were probably made within the facility, within the wood shops.
Okay, take a fast break and come right back. You're watching Hometown Cable. The sign in the middle says Dannemora State Hospital, so I guess we're in the hospital area.
Yeah, Dannemora State Hospital came about in about 1900. Well, actually, they received their first patients then. It is located right next to Clinton Correctional Facility, the main part. Today is called the Annex. Back then, in about 1896, the superintendent of the Clinton Prison was Walter N. Thayer. And his task or job was to build the state hospital for insane convicts. And what went about, it started in 1896, and by 1900 they received their first patients. The patients came by car, a railroad car, and there was 48 of them, and they came from Mattawan. And the hospital at that time was under the direction of Dr. Kibe, Dr. Lamb. Dr. Kibe came later. Dr. Lamb. And at one time, the facility itself housed as many as 1,400 patients. So you can see it was quite large. Today, the Annex, which is the hospital, only houses about 740 inmates. So you can see it was double the capacity of what it is today.
Yes, but now, Peter, what happens to those people today who are insane? Where do they keep them today?
Well, there's different facilities now under mental hygiene within New York State.
Okay.
There's Marcy State Hospital, and the bulk of them probably go there if there's a problem.
And they're saying that they became insane while in prison because of the conditions. They just couldn't stand being incarcerated and so forth?
One thing or another brought it about. It's no different than people in the community and society today. They all had their problems.
Kitchen, very interesting kitchen. Look at the, I guess those are inmates.
That's correct.
That's their eating dish?
I believe so, yes. There were bowls that were set there. If we look up here, we can see, now this was built by inmate labor, don't forget, and there was a stone cutter that taught the inmates to cut the stone. They mined it from up out of the mountains in the back. They cut the stone and they would bring it down. And as you can see, when you look at the building today, when you look over there, you'll see that it's quite a structure and a beautiful structure. The architecture is beautiful on it, and it's quite a piece as far as a building.
1902.
Yeah, this is just shortly after they opened. You can see some of it was still being worked on. You can see the scaffolding in the front. The grounds aren't even completed there. Here's some of your first group of officers. Back then they called them attendants. They weren't called officers at the state hospital. They were called attendants. And here's a ward as we go along within the facility. And then this is what this facility looked like in about 1951. It's changed a little bit in here in the front of what it looks like today. And here is the auditorium or the gymnasium, where it is today. And they were showing movies back then for the patients.
Was this a dangerous place to work because of the state of mind of the inmates?
Well, they were under a doctor's care. They had their problems. There was a doctor, there was North that was there at one time. He was killed by one of the patients there. The patient got enraged and attacked him and killed him. I believe that was around 1915 that happened. But you know, with any of these type of facilities, even today, you know, you have your different risks.
As we look at this, again, to remind you that in '72, it was closed as a hospital. It became the Adirondack Correctional Treatment and Evaluation Center for various prisons throughout the state.
Well, that was a program that was experimental with counseling and stuff like that. And they picked this institution to do it. Also at that time, Camp Adirondack was here, and later went to Raybrook, New York. They moved it up there. But Camp Adirondack originated right here in one of the buildings right here.
That was 3 years. By July of '75, became an annex, and it's still an annex today, 20 years later. We'll take another break here. We're just about halfway through this series of pictures. I don't know if that means in time, but at least in quantity. And we're talking with Peter Light, who, as it says right here, and very deservedly so, the layout and photos are by W.P. Light, Peter Light, who's been a correction officer here for 27 years. Well over half his life.
Yeah.
Yes. I've already glanced at the top of the headline there. In 1929 riot. I guess that's the fear of every place of incarceration, isn't it?
That's right. You know, everybody keeps their fingers crossed and tries to do their jobs and hope that, you know, it never comes about, but sometimes it does. But in 1929, Clinton Prison was struck by an inmate riot on July 22nd. And it started off when inmates were coming back to the cell blocks from morning breakfast. And it started in that area, and that was, at that time, that was a recreation area where it actually took place. At the time, there was the superintendent here was Harry Kaiser, and he was in charge, and he was a man that had been a superintendent here twice. Change of politics. He left for a short time, but then he did come back in later years. He was here in 1912, and then later, I believe around 1926, somewhere in that area, he came back as a superintendent again. As far as photos of the actual riot, there's none actually that was ever seen and ever to be found. But we have photos from outside the wall, what the people within the village took, and you could see what was going on. This one photo right down here depicts the area of where the riot was. Today it was, if you look at it today, it was between the industry and arts, and the blocks, excuse me. That was a recreation area back then.
Can I interrupt? Go ahead, excuse me, finish on this.
And on the east end of this section right here is actually where the riot took place.
Do you know whether it was something that was planned, or did it just was a spontaneous thing because of an accident? Do you know whether it was a planned?
Well, it was understood that it was planned because Auburn had a riot one day apart, and back then communications weren't what they were today, and it was supposed to kick off at the same time, from what I understand. But due to communications and stuff, they were one day apart. The day before this riot actually took place, from what I understand, there was a ball game going on with outside teams. Everything looked pretty much normal. But once the riot did get going, there was a couple guards that were hurt. They were beaten and hit. They were with stones and etc. They were running companies from the mess hall.
They took hostages, did they?
Yes, they had a few. They had a fellow by the name of Dame that was in the heating plant, or the powerhouse, which was inside the facility, and there was a couple others, but nobody really got injured seriously as far as employees. There was a couple, I believe there was 3 inmates that did lose their lives within the skirmish, within the riot during the time. As you can see here from the pictures as we get going, you can see some of the fires that were on the other side of the wall. You can see the smoke billowing over the walls, and you can see some of the old state troopers came to the rescue, and they were in directing traffic, and some of them were actually up in the wall, and you can see the people that were on the wall at the time trying to watch it and keep it under control. The inmates were more or less just destroying property when it was going on.
Did they have access to any guns? Did they capture any guns from the guards or anything?
No, they had no weapons as far as that goes.
Okay. This looks like a state policeman right here.
That's
with the leggings, you can see.
Yeah, and there's another one right here.
Right, you can see them there.
Yeah, and they called for fire departments. There was the village of Dannemora was here, and Morrisonville. They actually came up. The 26th Infantry out of Plattsburgh came up. They were never used, but they were here on hand. They used some of their equipment. They brought in trucks and stuff like this, and they used some of their equipment. There's a picture here with the 26th Infantry the day after, posed in front of the administration building,
down here,
depicting what they looked like with Warden Kaiser. standing with them in the front.
Was it just one day riot?
That's right. It was only one day. It started in the morning and it was ended by evening. Actually, there was only about 200 inmates that really took a strong part in it. But when it was over with, there was quite a lot of damage. And at the time, the governor of New York State was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And there's a picture here of him. He came up and toured the situation a few weeks later and more or less give the okay to, you know, we've got to rebuild the prison because there was a lot of damage. And so at that time, he gave the okay so that the money would be appropriated and they would start building.
Now, the principal keeper, again, many times in, I worked for customs and other things, the deputy usually knows more what's going on than the head man. He's usually a figurehead in many cases.
Well, the PK, or deputy superintendent with security, is basically what it says. He's in charge of security.
Okay.
And he worked under the warden. The wardens were quite powerful back then. They controlled the prison.
Right. Here's another picture of the Franklin Roosevelt, the governor in his car, came to examine the damage from the riot.
You can see from the two pictures, it depicts with him sitting in the car. If you remember a little bit to do with history, with his, I believe it was polio.
Yes. Yes.
And he didn't get around too well.
No.
And he tried to either stay in the chair or stay in the car. Or you didn't see him walking very much. Very, very little of it.
Yeah, there was a recent story on A&E that I saw on TV where he had someone always near him, and they more or less kind of carried him as he walked. They supported him, and he did it so well, it was hard to pick up.
Yeah, and he didn't let a lot of the news media
take
photos of him.
And they were good at that. They didn't take him, you know, with his legs and so forth. Was there ever another riot? This is basically the one riot you've had at Dannemora?
Well, they've had other little skirmishes here and there, but basically as far as a large riot with a lot of problems, this was probably one of the biggest they've ever had.
And it was an expensive riot? They did a lot of damage?
Yeah, there was quite a bit of damage done. And because of it, and the amount of buildings that were destroyed, it started the new construction era. And that's what we're going to be getting into next, and we'll do a little bit of the description on that. And that's when the prison, what you see it today, kind of more or less started taking its change, and the big house era started.
Okay, we'll let Calvin reposition himself into the next series of pictures. And again, you're watching this very, very interesting presentation and set of pictures and text by Peter Light. And remember, keep tuned, and maybe we'll tell you later on when we find out, or watch your paper. It'll be at the Angel Building at the
Angel Hall in August for dinner, and it's also be at the Clinton County Fair on July 18th, and it'll be there for the full week.
We were talking off camera. You ought to have a book on this, but there's reasons. We'll get back to that. As Peter told us, a new era was taking place about 1929, now when they started to reconstruct and redo most of Clinton Prison.
Yeah, like I said, you know, Franklin Delano Roosevelt came and inspected the prison after the riot of '29, and it came about there was $200,000 worth of damage. In 1929, that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money today, but it was a lot of money back then. And what they had to do at that point was reconstruct it and rebuild it. And as we go along here, we can see some of the stuff that took place. This is the tearing down of the South Hall. That was the block that hooked to the back of the superintendent's house, and we spoke about it a little bit earlier in our displays.
Yeah.
And these are inmates tearing it down. Now, if you look close again, now in 1848, the money for the original cannon was appropriated. We showed a picture of it.
Yes.
Here, hidden in the background, there it is.
Oh, yes.
Sitting right there.
Yeah.
And that's in 1930, and that's been in the facility since 1848.
82 years later.
Yeah, and it's still sitting there. But that's the old story. A picture's worth 1,000 words.
Absolutely.
If you look at them closely, you'll find different things.
Absolutely. So what happens to inmates while you're tearing down and building new? You don't have facilities for them.
Well, there probably was different blocks. They wouldn't do it all at once.
All right.
They do it over. Now this construction era went from about 19 1930 to 1945.
Oh, 15 years. All right.
So this is, and then because of this is what they call the big house era of construction, it was kind of nicknamed that because it started the big massive prison system as what it is today. Different parts. Okay, as we look down here, this is a special housing unit. This was when it's being constructed. You can see the forms, and it was actually in the wintertime. As we go over here, one of the A or B block area, between industry and there, it was a little accident they had. One of the big cranes tipped over.
Oh, yes. There's one fly in this building, and he's right around us, Peter. And I haven't. He's around your head now. Okay, a model of the.
Yeah, this was a model of the facility by a group of architects when they were getting ready to rebuild the institution.
This is the front right here. This is Cook Street. That's 1932. That picture.
Yep, that's correct.
1932. Talking about future construction. All right.
That's correct. Because, like I said, the construction era went from like 1930 to 1945. This is one of the blocks inside the facility, and they're installing the radiators and stuff like that. It's still being worked on.
You know what? I'm surprised that no one took a picture of inside of the riot. Would you think that somebody would have a camera inside? Wouldn't you?
Nobody. We have never seen any.
Yep.
And none have ever come up.
Yep, that's surprising.
There's none within the facility, and nobody's ever volunteered any. And we've looked in Albany and different places, and none have ever come up.
That is surprising.
There might be some, but we've never seen them. I've never seen them.
Right.
As we go on here, and this is excavation within the prison during that period of time. They're working on the mess hall there. Here again, they're reconstructing the stone wall into the concrete wall in 1931. What it looks like. And the construction of the hospital. The hospital was completed in 1941, and here they are digging the foundations. Now that's a 3-story building, so that's quite a large building. And they're probably getting ready to put footings in. They have different homes up on along the side of the facility that belong to the state.
Now, who occupies those homes?
Well, years ago, there was a rule that stated that you couldn't live any more than 5 miles from the institution if you worked here. The mode of transportation wasn't good back then, so there was kind of a problem. You know, if they had trouble and they needed people, you know, you had to get here. So if you lived 10 miles away, you just couldn't get here quick enough. So there was a standing rule. You couldn't live any more than 5 miles from the facility. And because of that, they built a lot of state homes, and the state homes used to house different officials for the prison. Some of them were doctors. Some of them were the superintendent had his home. The assistant
administration, mostly people.
Mostly, and then there was a few officers too that actually got in it, and some people in industry too were involved in it. The people who were in charge of industry, and they would pay rent for these homes. They still do today. They pay the state so much to live in them, and that's it. This is the industry building being built. And you can see a small crane here. The industry building is still there today. Some of the towers that you see today along the wall are being constructed here.
Well, I don't suppose I should ask this, but I'm going to ask you. You don't have to answer. Are all the towers manned?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I don't want your secrets, but whatever I see a tower, there's someone in it. Not every other one and things like that.
No, they're all manned.
They're all manned. Okay. 24 hours.
Yes.
Okay.
Woman?
Are they women also? I mean,
Yeah.
there are some women in the towers too.
Well, you got women correction officers today.
So they could be in the tower also.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
This is some building.
Thanks, Calvin.
Building of the blocks here.
Yes.
That's some formwork and some scaffolding there. Some more of the towers being built. You can see it. There's a lot of pictures of the construction of the facility, but a lot of them are small pictures, and they're kind of a picture that were very hard to copy because of the tone on them and stuff like that.
Have you ever tried this new color copier in Plattsburgh?
Yes.
And it still won't bring it out good?
Well, don't forget they're small pictures.
Yeah, but you can blow them up, you know, like...
Yeah, but they wash out.
Oh, they do wash. All right.
Yeah,
yes, I've blown up a lot.
And but some of them come out pretty good, and some of them we had trouble
Well,
with.
the best you can have. At least you've got some pictures, you know. Great record here. We're getting into another... We'll just take a fast break again while Calvin repositions, because this is probably one of the things that people know more about than anything happening here at Dannemora Correctional Center. Here we are, right in the center. Let's start with the man himself.
This is Father Ambrose Highland. He was the main man as far as the Catholic chaplain at in the prison just prior to 1940, and he was the one that actually got the church going. There was Father McNamara at one time was here in later years, but Father Highland was the main starter of the prison, of the church within the facility. At one time, where the church is, that was the farm, and the wall was extended outside, and the farm was torn down, and they saved the old beams from it, and they laminated it, and they took some of the old stone from the old wall, and the inmates built the church. They even turned around, they did the stained glass work. A fellow by the name of Sarasi, he was an inmate at the time. He wrote a book in later years about the prison and the church and the stained glass windows. They did their own stained glass windows. Some of the stuff was donated from all over the world. Part of the altar is from Magellan's ship. Some of the pews within the church were donated by Lucky Luciano, who was a famous mobster or whatever you want to call back in that time. He did time in Dannemora. He donated from his family and stuff like that. He donated some of the wood. They were all done in red oak was the pews, and he contributed the money towards this and purchased the stuff. There was an organ that was donated. Today that organ is in the museum, at the State Museum in Albany, in the educational building. But when it was originally put into the church in 1941, when it opened, the value of that organ was worth like $25,000. So you can imagine it's quite an item today, and it's in a museum in Albany.
Based on what you're saying, is this the starting of it?
No, this is just a grotto outside.
Okay. So it's outside, but then is this the original wall, then it was moved?
No, this is the wall as it is today.
Okay, as it is today.
It's
now,
inside the facility.
One thing that I've heard, and I don't know, do you know where he's a native of, Father Highland?
Chateaugay,
New York. He's absolutely, that's what I'd heard.
Yeah.
And I think he went back there later in his life, didn't he?
That's correct.
Was a pastor there, but he was a native. And it mentions here his niece, Lois Brooks, and I think that's the Brooks family that are in and around Malone now.
No, that Brooks family is she's from Plattsburgh, New York.
She is? All right.
She was the niece of Father Highland, and what she did is she researched and compiled all the documentation to place the Church of St. Dismas on New York State and the Federal National Registry in Washington, D.C. as a historical site. So this church actually is owned not by the state of New York, it's owned by the Catholic Diocese, from what I understand, and it's also a historical site. So it has to be maintained, and it has to be kept up, and it'll be there forever, because there is a lot of historical pieces within the church. Like I say, there's parts of Magellan's ship there, the altar and stuff like that. And
do you know the name of the book that was written? You said someone wrote a book about you probably could pick it up at your local library.
It's a hard one to pick up. I have a copy of it. It's called The Gates of Dannemora. It was written by a fellow by the name of Bonn, B-O-N-N.
Okay. Gates of Dannemora. I'm glad you have it.
Now, as we go along here, you'll find out that Father Highland also, they were going to do a movie on the church, the building of the church, and about Father Highland and the inmates. And MGM signed a contract with Father Highland for $25,000 to do a film for the rights to it. He received the $25,000. The picture was never made. They still have the rights today, and the $25,000, he took it and he put it into the church to help build it. So this is part of the main altar of the Church of St. Dismas. And St. Dismas is also the Church of the Good Thief, they call it, because of being in a prison. This was the cornerstone lunch, the cornerstone lane and mass that was done within the prison. They were actually, when they started building it, the bishop was there
Francis
J. Monahan.
1939.
Yep. Yep. And this is a picture of Father Hyland when he was out in California with MGM. He was in the studios, and also if you go back up here, you'll see a picture of him with Cornell Wilde. Cornell Wilde was supposed to play the part of him in the movie. It's an autographed picture of him.
So it never has.
Never was made. No.
Okay.
Never was made. But I would assume that MGM still has the rights to it, and the church itself received the money.
Okay, move to another location. Be right back. Thanks for tuning in, and you're watching a very enjoyable, I think anyway, display and presentation by Correction Officer Peter Light. We're in Dannemora, New York.
I got a few more pictures to look at, Bob. Why don't you tell them?
I beg your pardon. Where are they?
Tell them who St. Dismas was.
St. Dismas was, I believe, was the good thief that was crucified next to our Lord, right, near Jesus Christ. And he's the one that said that you shouldn't be doing this. I don't know. I can't quote him, but he said you have found your place in heaven this day, and so forth. He was the one that was the good thief right next to Jesus when he died.
Well, there were two.
Yeah, go ahead.
There were two thieves, and one was ridiculing Jesus, and St. Dismas is the one who spoke up and said, told him that, this was a good man, and you shouldn't be doing that. And that's when Christ said, your place in heaven has been assured, or something. I don't know exact quote. I'm sure, but.
Okay, well, Cal was a little premature there because he wasn't quite a saint at the time he was on the cross next to him. He became later.
Well, he got anointed by the chief.
Yes, he did. Right there. Well, this is probably one of the depressing, depending on your thoughts, of any prison, and that was the electrocutions and deaths. Here we had it. Tell us the story about these, Peter.
Well, New York State passed a law in 1884 that the electric chair would be used to execute criminals for murder, whatever the case may be, whatever the sentence was. But it never started until 1890. The first one was actually executed in the state with the electric chair, and that was actually done in Auburn, New York. The guy that invented the electric chair worked in Auburn prison. He was a guy by the name of Edwin Davis. It was kind of an interesting story. He invented the chair. He invented it within the facility, and he built it in the carpenter shops. He was an electrician, and they tested it in different ways by the use of animals and this and that, and they found that it worked. And when they started to use it, he was the electrocutioner, but he patented it after building it, and he wouldn't. He wanted to sell it. He wouldn't let the state of New York use it until he sold him the patent, and he ended up. He sold him the patent. I believe it was for $10,000. When he would go around at that time in Sing Sing, Clinton Prison, in Auburn, that's where it was designated in 3 areas within the state to do the executions for the death penalty. In Clinton Prison, they did 26 of them over the years, and the first one was done in 1892 under the warden Walter N. Thayer. And if you remember when we talked a little back a while ago, Thayer came up a couple different times. But he was the first superintendent here in 1892 to do the electrocutions. In 1914, the New York State Legislature was adopted that the death sentences would be all brought to Sing Sing. They wouldn't be done here anymore. But during that period of time, there was a fellow by the name of Robert Elliott, and he was an electrician. He was born in New York State. He came here as to be the head electrician, not knowing at the time he had to be the assistant to this Edwin Davis for the electrocutions. It kind of bothered him at first. He wrote a book about it, his memoirs, quite a 300-400 page book. I have that book too. And in it he states how he felt when he first started. It kind of bothered him. But in In later years, he was appointed as to take Davis's place, and he became the electrocutioner in New York State. And before he was done, he was the electrocutioner in Vermont, New Hampshire, Connecticut, New Jersey, Massachusetts, and I believe Pennsylvania. All the Northeast he was doing them, and he was also doing them for the federal government. And he electrocuted probably more people than anybody in the world with this type of situation. When he finally retired or died, he lived in down around Sing Sing, and that's where the electrocutions were going on. And when it ended,
here's a little bit of irony right here. Here you see an old lantern for light, and yet they've got power to electrocute somebody right here. There's a contrast, and that's probably for light only, right?
Well, not really.
No?
This is the electric chair set up in the county museum when they had their display. And that just happened to hit over there.
All right.
It's just timing. Actually, over here.
Here is the actual location,
There's
right?
an old picture right here, a copy of the electric chair with the control booth in the background and where it was done.
And this is how and where they get to it, correct?
Yeah, this was basically what they called the route that the convicted person walked for death. The death house, the chair was here. These were all cells. This was where inmates on death row were being housed. They'd come out and they'd go the long way. They didn't take the short route. They would go the long way,
yeah.
And then they'd go to the chair. And this section here was where all the witnesses were.
Yeah. Did they need witnesses?
Yes, they did, because the public wanted to know if it was done.
Okay.
And
so they would request to be a witness, huh?
Some of them were asked to be by the state or by officials. Some would ask to be, and but most of them were asked by the state themselves to be there.
Okay. You see here, like in 1903, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in 1903, then it was 2 years. So you could be waiting 2 years here at least, then 4 years before the next one, while they're waiting in these cells.
That's correct. But don't forget that even today with the appeal process within the governments, within all the states, it can take anywhere from 7 to 15 years,
yes.
You know, to go through, exhaust all your rights and your processes.
This probably is a story that most people know, but tell us a little bit about 1903 here with this family.
Well, these were three brothers that were executed, and they were from Columbia County, just down below Albany, I believe. And they had killed an uncle, I believe, with the story.
Yep.
And what had happened, to the day they died, they all pleaded innocent, and they were all executed simultaneously, one after another. And I believe that was in 1903.
Yep, October 1st. Now there's a story about this that's kind of a legend. I don't know if you ever heard it.
What's that?
That their mother supposedly was also incarcerated in the prison at Dannemora.
No, not their mother.
Okay.
No.
A relative?
No, at one time there was a female sent here, was sentenced to death. But her in I believe it was 1903, again, the same year. And her sentence was commuted and pardoned, and she was sent to Mattawan. They actually had to set a section up within the school, in the custodian area of the school, to house her for a short time. But within a year, she was pardoned, and she was sent to Mattawan.
Okay, but the story that I've heard and read was that their mother was in the prison. I don't know if she was an inmate or not. And as she watched the lights dim each time, she knew she had lost another son that particular day. Now, that's just a good story, maybe, but it is in writing.
I've never seen it.
You've never? I'll send you a copy of that.
Yeah,
so you'll have that for your, even though it's not true, it's for your records.
This is something that you always learn. You find out something new.
Well, I've got a lot of old articles out of the Plattsburgh paper. That's one of the ones that was in an old Plattsburgh paper.
Maybe
yes.
she was visiting.
Huh?
Maybe she came up.
Could have been visiting. It could have been, but she said every time the lights blinked, she knew she had lost another son.
Well, a lot of times the family members were here when it happened.
I think it said that she was in the prison at the time, and I assumed that she was a prisoner, but maybe she wasn't. But that's something for your archives, along with the others.
Yeah.
That's probably the only thing I've mentioned all day that you didn't already know or have a story about.
Well, Calvin helped us out with St. Dismas.
Oh, yeah, he did. Yes, yes, he did. See?
Okay, here's something that's going on today, and it's probably the last 3 sections we got. This is the facility today, and this is what is proposed in the future. There's quite an enlargement that's going to be going on. New hospital, the attachment of Clinton, Maine with Clinton Annex, so you can actually walk from one facility to the other and still be inside the facility.
And those colors show which one is proposed?
That's correct.
The brown ones?
The brown ones.
Okay, these here are the ones that are proposed.
Yeah. And this is a 10-year project, I understand, and right now it's waiting to be passed by the legislature and stuff like this.
Oh,
and
that's a parking lot.
that'll be the parking lot. The parking lot will be up back.
Oh, yes.
Behind the facility.
We're right here, by the way, excuse me, but we're right in this building right here on the right. That's where we are.
That's correct.
Okay.
And as we go down, these are just pictures of the facility, what they look like today. This is a sign that's out front of the facility. This is an aerial view of what the facility looks like today, actually a picture. What Clinton Annex looks like today. The mess hall in Clinton, Maine. One of the towers out in the yard today, in the north yard in Clinton, Maine, what it looks like.
If you remember when we first started in this building, we saw a painting by one of the inmates, very similar to this one. The powerhouse that I pointed out way back and found out what it was, it's in this same general location. Okay, we'll move right along.
As we go over here, we see some of the vocational shops within Clinton, Maine. Some of the industry again, a little bit of everything we've got here. Some of the cell blocks at the galleries. This is what they call the flats. It's your lower galleries, always called your flats.
There's only 2 levels now in contrast to 3?
No, there's more than that in some of them.
Yes,
yes.
okay.
Here's your kitchen. Some more of your textile industry
Just
today.
to let him just make sure he can focus in on these before we move along.
Sorry, I'm going a little fast.
Well, you got to move that camera just a little bit.
Yeah.
And get it. Okay, the textile within
yeah.
Clinton, Maine.
Yeah, that's what it looks like today, and that's been there for years, as far as textile, and it's still there today.
When you go to the Clinton County Fair, they have their own building, and you can see some of the items that you make right there that are.
Some of the hobbycraft items will be there. Industry items are not going to be there this year because of this display. Usually that's there every year.
Okay.
But I believe they're not going to be there this year because of this display. It's going to take the place of it for this 1 year because of the 150th anniversary.
I was going to ask you off camera, but let me ask you right here on TV for the first time. Are you ever available to go out and speak to groups? Like anybody in the Northern Lions Club or the Kiwanis want a speaker? Are you available?
I really never have done any of it. This has been a hobby that I've really done on my own, just an interest thing because I grew up within the...
You do so well, and you're so knowledgeable about this.
Well, there's another fellow within the area. He does a lot of it too. He's a village historian. His name is Terrence Gilroy.
Yes.
Terrence does a wonderful job. He's a nice fellow to work with. He really gets into it, and Terrence really puts a lot of research and a lot of time-wise to get into the stuff and really research it. He knows a lot of the history, and he's excellent at it.
So this
and
is
he does a little bit of work on it.
Okay, so this is most of a personal thing for you.
This has been a hobby for me.
Hobby for you, yeah. Got into a pretty big hobby. All right, and some more pictures of the administration building, Clinton, Maine, and the annex gate and tower. There's that fence we talked about.
And these are just different offices up here, and some of the mess hall in the annex.
Note the difference in the mess hall from what you saw back in the 1800s with the bowls on the tables. At this time, of course, people pick up their own food and they sit 4 at a table now. Is that the idea, roughly?
That's correct.
2 on each side?
2 on each side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can they go sit anywhere they want, or are they designated?
It's more or less designated to keep it orderly to a certain extent.
All right.
And here's the range, the training range for Clinton Correctional. The main gate, what it looks like today, inside and out.
All right, the range, and then... Now, they used to let you come in here for Christmas programs. Is that still going on? Invited guests.
It was the last I knew.
Okay. I came one time.
At one time, years ago, they did a lot of shows in here. There were minstrel shows. And a lot of programs that at different times they would have. But the only one left is actually the Christmas show, and then what's in public is invited.
The powerhouse and the heating plant, which is located outside of the facility. And then the North Recreation Yard, and I think we should let's take a short break at this, and we'll come back, and maybe you could give us a little dissertation on what that is, really, because that's very unique in itself,
Yeah.
the North Yard. Okay, the picture is frozen on the screen of this area. Now, what is this North Yard? It's very unique, I would think.
Well, the North Yard is a recreation yard for the inmates, and it's been there for quite a few years. But over the years, it's gathered into different areas, different courts, different factions gather in different courts, and they live within. They don't live, but they enjoy the recreation out there. They have wood stoves that are made from barrels and stuff like that. They cook out there. They spend their summer. This is a big privilege for them, and they like it and they enjoy it out there. And it's some of their free time.
Yeah.
But it's unique within the state or within the system because it's the only one that's known to be like this.
Again, I have heard like they may have a 6x6 area or a 4x6.
It's a little bit bigger than that, each area.
Each area is bigger than that.
A little
but
bit bigger.
It's a privilege to be invited in by that inmate. Anybody else to go into his little living room, so to speak.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're invited in. It's like their own little yard, that little section of
But
land.
everyone doesn't have one, correct?
That's correct.
Because there's not enough. So it's only the people who are more, not, I wouldn't say trusting, but more deserving, or they...
Well, it's more or less who is invited into who, and they earn them too. But it's a unique setup of its own.
Mm-hmm. Certainly is. And they also have ski jumps out there. For the winter, they can ski and other things that they can
And
for
the
exercise.
ball fields, football field, and there's basketball courts out there.
But now they don't go all out there at one time, do they?
No.
No, they go by sections and so forth.
Usually it's by sections.
So by, are you controlling?
Yeah.
Yeah. But nobody shares the same unit at different times of the day. If it's his, it's not somebody else another 12 hours a day.
That's correct.
It's only his.
And the yard is divided up into fences too, by fences. It's like quartered.
Yep. Very interesting. As you said, it's the only one in the state that I've ever heard of. All right, correct. Now we're going to go over and look at these. You want to start with the oldest one first over here? We'll be right back. We're going to look at these displays that are set up, of the models. Great job here. Okay, tell us what all this is all about.
This right here is a model that depicts what the prison looked like in 1869. It was built within the facility. All these models that we see here were built within the facility. This model was built in what they call the Merle Cooper Wood Shop, which is a program over here. And it was the instructor was a fellow by the name of Thomas Rabideau. And he put this one together for us in the last year with pictures that I had and some maps that I gave him, and he put it together, and it came out quite well. I think he did a nice job. And if you look within the facility, you can see the old track that used to come over, come across. The mine was actually over here within the facility, and they would bring it over, and there were some forges over here. A few more forges down here, and this is where they would work with it. You can see as we spoke when we were talking, the old high post tower.
Yes.
One of the old state shop, one of the old buildings there.
This original mess hall with the and the rest of it, where they right here.
That was the main building.
Main building.
This was the main cell hall block.
Okay.
Here. This right here was what they called the main building. That was that building again that had the mess hall, first floor. Second floor was the guard room and the offices, and the third floor was the hospital. Up in the back, we've got a home, and we have also got a sawmill up there. This is basically what the prison looked like back then.
Today,
with all the stockade fence.
Today, is the area much bigger than where the fence is then?
Actually not, no. It's probably pretty close to the same. Over where the mine was isn't part of the facility anymore.
Remember, this here is south, this direction. I guess north is there, and west kind of go off in that direction. And the hills are back on the far side, and the highway is off to our left. Cook Street is right through here on Main Street. Okay, that's one of them. Okay.
This right here that we're looking at is a model of what they call the annex. This is was originally Dannemora State Hospital. Down in front here is your administration building. And as you look up through the back, you can see all the different courtyards and the recreation yards and some of the old buildings. It is a large complex. It's bigger than what people actually think it is. There's a lot of buildings involved in it. There's a lot of some of the old homes, some of the old shops, and the big recreation yard that they have up in the back. And this was, at one time, more or less a facility of its own that supported itself because it was a state hospital. It wasn't a prison. And then when it was picked up as a prison, it was named, it was an annex of Clinton, Maine.
Mm-hmm. And how many are here compared to Clinton, Maine, as far as inmates?
There are inmates in here. There's only about a population of about 740.
Okay.
But at one time, don't forget this, when this was a state hospital, it housed 1,400 inmates.
And it didn't have all those buildings either, right, at that time?
Oh, it had pretty much what you see.
In the back there, too? Yes?
Yes, pretty much what you see here is what it had.
Okay. Right here on Main Street, and all you see is this row right here and this, more or less, from the main street. We'll give you the highlights of this is the prison as it is today, the main, and then you can look at it either at the fair or somewhere else, but give you a basic idea. You've seen pictures, but go ahead, tell us.
Well, this is basically what we looked at that first picture when we first started the artist view of the prison. And it shows the different cell blocks. Everything is here. And it's as far as structurally, as far as buildings within the facility. This is Clinton, Maine. It's a Max A facility. It houses probably about 1,800 inmates. We even got the church in here. Everything's here structurally in this model that's actually within the facility grounds of the main facility.
Okay. There's an enclosure off to the right here. Is that something you could tell us about?
Where's this?
Right in the back over here. That circle?
Well, that's special housing unit.
That's special housing, all right?
Yeah.
And then the church way in the back.
There you got the church up in the background.
Yeah.
And you've got visitors trailers, if you notice, up in the back.
Oh,
too.
That's for the visitors. Okay.
Yeah, and that's a program that goes on today. And then you got the north yard with depicting different courts and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And the new gymnasium.
Is this a cell block in the middle, like an H? Is that a cell block in the back, in the middle?
Way up in the back, that's the hospital.
That's the hospital within the facility. H. Thanks, Calvin. That's right. The spread H up there.
There's different wings of the hospital.
Okay.
All those little units back there in the corner.
That's the north yard that you're talking about.
Yep.
And there's lights back there too.
That's correct.
They can be out there in the evening?
Oh, they're out there to way into the evening with programs as far as recreation. Not like it used to be years ago. Years ago, 4:30 come, the prison locked down, and that was the end of it. Mm-hmm. That was it for the night. But now programs go within the evening, school programs, industry, recreation.
Do they use that ski jump?
Still today, I believe so.
There is one there, but there is one there back there. Now, the general recreation field is inside of the fence here, right? Correct?
Yes.
And not into the... In other words, everyone does not go up into that north beyond the fence where the green is. Well, everyone is just the ones who have their units or are invited.
It's divided up into sections as far as the fences and stuff like that.
But if you don't have your own unit, you got to be invited to be up in there.
That's correct.
Okay. Are the high ones for the correction officers?
That's right.
Okay. You see the little elevated buildings back there, that more or less? That's for your correction officers who are watching. Okay. Anything else we should know back here?
No, that's pretty
much
it.
And here's the main wall right here in front. And the gate is over there now, or is it still in the middle?
You know,
it's on the end now.
It's on the end now.
All right, and a nice facility, and we've been talking, and we're very indebted to W. Peter Light. I see on your signs there, yeah. Peter. And how long have you had this collection or this hobby of yours with pictures?
I've probably been doing this since just about the time I graduated from high school. And it's just been a hobby collecting. It just got bigger and bigger and more interesting and bigger, and I've shared it with different people. I've shared it with the village historian, Terrence Gilroy. Some of the stuff I've made sure he's gotten copies of stuff. And
did any of your parents or relatives work here before you?
My father worked as an officer here. He retired here in 1973.
He told you it's a good job for you. Did he tell you that?
I don't know about that, but it's supported me and my family, and it brings a lot of revenue in the area, the facility, and a lot of employment for different people, and now with all the facilities in the area.
Okay. I don't know anything else. We've covered just about everything we can think of, and certainly we are very, very indebted, as we say, to Peter. And Calvin had contacted him. We've been wanting to do this for some time, and we'll probably be doing some more sometime. We're looking for a couple movies that are available. Way back in the 1845 to the 87 period, and another one done not long ago. And if we can get the access to those, we'll be showing those on Hometown Cable also. And a man by the name of Jarvis, I understand, that's involved in those.
Well, the first one was done by an officer here by the name of Bruce Jarvis, and the second one that was done here for the sesquicentennial, for the 150th anniversary. And it was actually done by a group of seniors at Plattsburgh State University, and it was a class that they did, and they did quite a job. They did a nice job on it. It really came out nice.
We hope you've enjoyed this tour by pictures and by models here at the Dannemora Correctional Center. And if I have said anything during this period that offended anybody, or I used the wrong name, to certainly be by accident. It was called Clinton Prison, now it's called Clinton Correctional Center.
Facility.
Facility. Oh, God, I can't call it center. Facility. So if I have said anything and that bothers anybody, I apologize. I don't know why I should, but I do it just in case. The last thing I want to do is to offend anybody who might see this film. And if you said anything you want to apologize for?
No, I think I've pretty much said it. That it's been interesting, and we're glad to have you, and hope that the people get out and see it at the fair and come to our open house this weekend.
Okay, and if you enjoy it and you see this man on the street or anywhere, tell me you enjoyed all the work he put in here, although it's part of his job, and they must give you time to do this. I hope this isn't all on your own time.
Well, some of it was, and a lot of it was on state time. Okay. And but it came out well, I think, and I think it's going to come out well, the rest of it.
And his job is taking good care of his family. He told you that, and he appreciates it. Thank you very much, Peter, again. We'll be back another time. Next Sunday, you'll be back here to give you more and different things. Talk to you later.